Welcome back to Battleground Florida. Now we continue our discussion about Hurricane Milton and Helene recovery with Hillsborough Commissioner Pat Kemp. She is also running against Republican Congresswoman Laurel Lee. Also, Republican Rocky Rochford is running against Congresswoman Castor. Their opponents were initially invited, but say they were unable to attend. So first, I talked to Congresswoman Laurel Lee about what action should be taken since FEMA is concerned about disaster funds. Here's what she had to say.
FEMA does have resources and supplies and personnel that they need to be dealing with the immediate aftermath of the disaster. If there is a need for additional people resources, we'll absolutely be looking at that.
So, Commissioner, we will start with you. What action should Congress take?
Well, you know, thank you so much first for allowing us to be here and talk. I've been very disappointed in my opponent, Laurel Lee, who's made herself unavailable for any kinds of discussions about this or debate or in a public forum at all. So I was glad for this opportunity. I was actually shocked. I had to check it about 3 times on her way down to this area with Hurricane Helene approaching, not to mention Hurricane Hilton. Laurel Lee voted to cut billions of dollars, $2.5 billion with a B, from FEMA. I found it stunning. She voted also to cut down the federal government, and as well, last year, she voted to defund the federal flood insurance program, to start to end the federal flood insurance program. That is not in the interests of anyone in this country, much less District 15 or the state of Florida. So I was rather stunned by that. I will tell you, my first commitment to the people of Florida is to fully support FEMA funding. I can't even imagine if the government was shut down, if FEMA wasn't here, what we would be doing. It is so important that we have these resources on hand, as well to fund our federal flood insurance program and look at a reasonable way to where we have to spend our resources and how we spend them. That's really important. But, you know, I find it almost disqualifying for a member of Congress, 2 years, but to do this, it's playing political games, it's not taking it very seriously. And meantime, she goes on OAN, Newsmax, News National, Fox, and she talks about all kinds of other things, but she is not dealing with this, and she's not being transparent about her vote. And by the way, she joined with a very small number of Republicans to do this. It wasn't as if the whole Republican Party even did this. Most of them were responsible and accountable. But 80 Republicans, including her and a lot of Republicans in Florida, voted against. It was strictly a Republican vote, voted to defund FEMA and shut down the federal government, or to cut billions from FEMA.
And Rocky, I want to get you in here as well. So what should Congress do? What action should they take?
So you know, the budget is limited as to what we've got. I mean, right now, the national debt is out of control. And so to say that they took billions from FEMA, it happens all the time in the military, you know, or in the government, where one agency will be told to send money to another agency. Comes from the executive branch, and I believe that needs to change, that we establish the budget and it needs to hold tight, and you need to, the legislation branch is the one that controls the purse strings. So first off is we need some fencing rules to ensure that the money doesn't go anywhere else. But to say that FEMA is now running out of money, which it's been all over the news, that there are a limited amount of funds right now. Now, for the FEMA representative to say that there will be an unlimited amount of funds and we will be able to recover, you know, I'm not sure that I completely agree with that. I haven't seen any of the documentation that supports that. I would say that what needs to happen is the funding needs to stop to illegal immigrants. Everything ties together. There are no exceptions to this. The government has exactly so much money to spend, and we're spending billions of dollars on illegal immigrants to have of our hurricane are not getting free hotel rooms, they're not getting free credit cards, you know, and that's the disparity, and that's what's making so many angry, especially in this area, having had 2 hurricanes roll through.
But you know that there are several pots of money. Of course, Congress has the power of the purse, and so when Congress allocates money to FEMA saying that these are disaster-related funds, and then if Congress allocates money to FEMA saying now these are meant for migrants, you believe that FEMA is able to dip both hands in those pots and say, hey, we can just use all of this for disaster or all of this for migrants?
They absolutely can. I mean, I've seen it happen. When I was at the Pentagon from 11 to 14, the Obama administration came down and said, DOD, you're going to have to give up, and I forget what the number was, but the bill to the Navy was $10 billion. So a budget that was about to be approved, that's in the hopper, ready to go, now we have to go back and redo it and take $10 billion out of the budget because we were told to do so. So the rules associated with the money can be changed on the fly.
Can I just respond to the undocumented workers part of it? I'm not going to respond to the second part here. That is total misinformation, and it's total misinformation.
I'm sorry.
That is not accurate, and we have got to. And the fact that FEMA is fully funded right now, $2.5 billion more, goes to the credit of the majority of the Republicans who voted to support it, but also the Democrats and who voted to not shut down the federal government. That would have been reckless and irresponsible. And to just be so cavalier about doing it as Laurel Lee was and voting on it like this is a political game, like this isn't serious governing and isn't making our government effective, adding to chaos and misinformation about it. So I just can't let that go.
You know, you are entitled to your opinion, ma'am, and I'm not here to take that away. But, you know, I have worked inside the federal government budget, and I understand how this works because I've been there, done that. You know, so I would say that, you know, when you look at, like, Kathy Castor and her voting against closing the border, which was part and parcel to where we are today, you know, by not paying to close the border, it has been left open, and we now have millions of people, excuse me, that are here in this country illegally, and they are illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants. I'm sorry, that's a really tough statement for some Democrats to say, but it is true, and they are bending us backwards to the point where we're going to break.
Speaking of Kathy Castor, I also talked to Congresswoman Kathy Castor about FEMA aid and concerns about the wait time for an answer from FEMA. Here's what she had to say.
It will take a little while because we want to make sure there's no fraud. FEMA has the funds for individual assistance for our neighbors.
And so the next question is, Richard, or for Rocky, what would you do about disaster aid if you were in Congress?
Well, first, you know, I'm one of those Republicans that's going to completely support FEMA. I worked with FEMA many times. I've been in command of what we call in the military HADR, Humanitarian Assistance Disaster Relief, and I have been in charge of and commanded those events around the world. So I'm very familiar with it, and I know the positive aspect that FEMA brings. But FEMA is not the problem. FEMA is not the issue. The issue is the Department of Homeland Security and how they're spending their money, and what the president is directing the Secretary of Homeland Security on how to spend his money, because they're telling them to move it around.
And I'll just say, we have, as I said, first do no harm, and take this very seriously. Don't be cavalier. Laurel Lee was about it. Don't do things that are irresponsible and reckless, like pushing to cut FEMA funds by $2.5 billion and shut down the federal government. And it's not as if she didn't realize she was coming right down here to Hurricane Helene. And as I said, she voted last year to defund the National Flood Insurance, which is a good part of what is in action now after Hurricane Milton, because areas flooded. We had the storm surge on Hurricane Helene at the beaches, and that also is the National Flood Insurance Program comes into play when they're hit with 3 feet walls of water. But we had neighborhoods and communities in Hillsborough County, Forest Hills. The university area was incredibly hard hit. Plant City, Lakeland, Zephyr Hills, I know Dade City, somewhat in Lutz, I understand, who are depending on these funds and also depending on FEMA assistance. So I will be there and fully supportive of, and I will not be putting out misinformation about how these things get done. There is transparency in Congress. You can go and look at the budget and look how it was voted on and who did it. So, you know we can look at that right now, as I did, because I wasn't sure. Honestly, I really couldn't even believe how shocking this vote was. I went and looked and read about it myself so that I could be assured and say this with complete confidence. But we need those resources. And I want to thank FEMA. They've done a wonderful job. I've been working at the County Emergency Operations Center. I've been walking through the neighborhoods. FEMA has done wonderful work. We've had a lot of volunteers in the state.
And thank you guys so much for being here. We are running out of time, but thank you both. And still ahead, my final thoughts and Ty's take.